generosity in providing the sponsoring the food and drinks this evening. So thanks very much for that, Lisa. Please join us. David, the floor is yours. Welcome, and I'll let you introduce yourself. And you've got a presentation coming up as well, haven't you? Yeah. Yeah. So is David's presentation ready to go? Here it is. Here. Wonderful. Yeah. I'll give you the 5 minutes.
Well, thanks everyone. It's an amazing pleasure to be here, and we've got a panelist of one today, or a panel of one rather. And I'm not going to dive onto each seat simultaneously. But the topic of today's talk, it's actually been updated. I was going to do a panel, but we had a few unavailabilities. So I've adapted and been nimble on my feet. And I'm going to give you a few reflections on something that I think is really important, which is the future role of product managers in the development of Web3 products. I think we've heard a lot of fantastic panels over the course of the week. And I think if you go back 4 years ago, it was all about lecture-style presentations, which, don't worry, I'm not going to take up the whole 30 minutes. I know what they can feel like. But I'll talk for about 15 minutes, just sharing some of those reflections. A bit about me, I started my career in stockbroking and corporate finance, and eventually realised that I wasn't that passionate about selling financial products. What I was actually passionate about was building and creating new financial services. That led me to a career sabbatical in London, where I worked with a few blockchain teams over there before coming back and consulting, and eventually ending up in my current role at DigitalX. If you're unfamiliar with DigitalX, we're an ASX-listed technology company working at the intersection of finance and technology, running cryptocurrency funds as well as developing blockchain-based products and services. But here we go. So the purpose of my talk today is to share some reflections on the governance principles for decision-making that we see emerging in the rapidly growing ecosystem of Web3 products, specifically those created and developed by DAOs. I want us to consider the paradigm shifts that are occurring and what this means for the toolsets and mindsets that will be increasingly necessary to deliver meaningful benefits to our end users and customers. With this lens, I'll finish with some predictions on what this means for the future of product management, of the product management profession, and how it can adapt. In modern Web2 development, product managers have increasingly found themselves with an increasing role in the product development process, with key responsibilities for identifying the needs of customers, aligning features with business objectives, and ultimately motivating the team needed for the product's vision to succeed in the world. As the raw power of digital technologies has accelerated, the most valuable question is far less, can we build this? And is far more, should we build this? Product managers are therefore the function most responsible for answering crucial questions like, who are my customers? What features of my product will actually benefit their lives? How will they interact with my solution? How will I grow the right team needed to support the product? How much will I charge? How will the business model be sustainable? And from the early days of Google's Associate Product Management course in 2002 until today, significant product decisions have predominantly relied upon the choices of small teams of individuals in largely hierarchical and always centralized technology company organizations. But what role do product managers have in the product development process in a Web3 context? One where we see significant paradigm shifts from centralized platforms to decentralized protocols, data transfer to value transfer, from users of a network to empowered owners of a network. How transferable are the skills and mindsets of Web2 here? Take, for example, the product development process of a typical DAO governed by a community and/or their voting preferences of token holders. If the most crucial and significant product decisions are increasingly handed over to a community, what scope is there left for product managers, if any at all? To answer this question, we first need a firm understanding of why and under what circumstances a DAO is a superior type of organizational structure for delivering the best outcomes for its users. So why build a product using a DAO-based governance? The history of Dao, since its first iterations, have grown enormously into what we see today. As a reminder, the largest DAOs today control billions of dollars worth of assets on their balance sheet. They support DeFi and other Web3 products that see millions of dollars worth of real daily usage, but whose decisions are coordinated and controlled by the voting preferences of hundreds of thousands of token holders, rather than any individual or company. While this is an amazing thing in itself, the early success of DAOs to date doesn't resolve our fundamental question of why build using a DAO. Part of this challenge lies in accurately defining what a DAO is in the first place. And you would think that an acronym, DAO, which is simply two adjectives describing a single noun, would be fairly easy to define. Is it an organisation? Is the organisation decentralised? Is it also autonomous? If no, then not a DAO. But reality is more complex, and people's interpretation of it even more so. Decentralisation is not a binary absolute, but it occurs on a spectrum due to constraints introduced by other trade-offs with other design priorities. And the trait of being autonomous is often taken to mean automatic rather than a quality of self-governance. What would be really useful is some kind of classification system for DAOs. As being software creations built from code, their shape is almost infinitely malleable. As the political scientist Alexander George of Stanford University put it, typological theories are useful to address complex phenomena without oversimplifying, clarifying similarities and differences to facilitate comparisons, provide a comprehensive inventory of all possible kinds of cases, incorporate interactions, effects, and draw attention to the kinds of cases that have not yet occurred. Originally, when writing this talk, I actually wanted to survey and describe the taxonomy for the different characteristics and governance design choices currently being made by the hundreds or thousands of DAO experiments taking place on global blockchain projects. Interestingly, Wikipedia classifies the entirety of DAOs within its section on algocracy, which is government by algorithm, but the best example I found came from Aaron Wright, clinical professor of law at the Benjamin N. Cardozo School of Law. What are the characteristics of DAO governance that we are seeing today? On and off-chain voting, direct democracy versus subcommittee DAOs, DAOs wrapped with a legal real-world entity versus those that are not, simple voting versus quadratic mechanisms, special purpose DAOs like Constitution DAO versus long-term mission-driven DAOs, Web3 products that begin as DAOs versus those that become a DAO over time. The list goes on. But one characteristic that perhaps we can all agree on is that a DAO is a way of maintaining open source, permissionless software using an open source, permissionless governance model. With this definition, we can see that a DAO is really the act of creating and building in such a way which mirrors the values behind the thing itself being created. If you value building decentralized open source software, why wouldn't you build it in a truly decentralized open source way? In other words, a DAO is a product team that truly lives their values. And in crypto, decentralization is valued above all else. One of the brilliant advantages of DAOs is their potential to turn the accepted product development methodologies upside down. Lean startup notions of first validating problem-solution fit, does my solution solve a real problem, before progressing to product market, are my customers willing to pay for my solution, and finally scale, how can I acquire more customers, essentially rely on de-risking critical business model assumptions about the product by gaining feedback from real customers as quickly as possible. Instead, many DAOs begin with a clear, compelling mission used to attract a community of customer advocates from the very start. Instead of taking a solution to customers, it is a collection of early adopter customers themselves that band together to solve a problem they deeply believe in, passionately committed to the vision of change they want to see in the world. To borrow an idea from Chris Dixon, imagine a Web3 ride-sharing DAO designed to take on Uber. Instead of drivers and passengers being the users of a Web2 ride-sharing network like Uber, they could become self-governing owners with aligned incentives in the very same network they use, with an ability to set key rules and parameters such as minimum trips, surge pricing, rating systems, and more. The problem this solves for drivers and passengers alike is real and demonstrated by the high network take rate or share of fees that Uber collects today, currently 27.5% of all rides. With proprietary technology, companies gain monopolies from their ability to build network effects. But with blockchains, we see these network effects now able to accrue as public goods. So what do these paradigm shifts in Web3 mean for the future of the product management profession? Here are 3 predictions on fundamental product management skills, which will stay the same or prove increasingly valuable, and 3 predictions on areas where product managers will need to adapt. Prediction 1 on what will stay the same. Let's try this as an agile user story. As a product manager, I need to truly understand the primitives of Web3 so that I can accurately identify user pain points that greater decentralization would actually solve. The foundation to any great product leader will always require a combination of 2 types of skills, the technical and the adaptive. In Web3, as with Web2, there is no avoiding the technical knowledge required to master your craft. Increasingly, this will require product people to both broaden and deepen their understanding of blockchains, smart contracts, NFT implementations, consensus mechanisms, and so on. This is a prerequisite to ensuring Web3 products gain meaningful traction by solving a real problem in a way that makes them not just a little bit better than their Web2 counterparts, but a lot better. Peter Thiel reasons a new product must be at least 10x better than its closest substitute in some important dimension. Prediction number 2. As product decisions are increasingly made by communities of DAO members and less by product teams, the role of product management will become increasingly focused on another one of their core competencies, creating and maintaining alignment. Underlying all Web3 products will remain the need to constantly align a DAO community around a shared vision. As Stephen Covey famously put it, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. Most great organizations don't die because they did something bad, it's because they drown in opportunity. And therefore, reinforcing a sharp focus on what is important will be crucial. From this perspective, the future of product management might look more like what Ethereum's self-proclaimed cat herders are today. A collective of individuals working together to support the Ethereum core developers with project management and other aspects of communication and coordination. Prediction number 3. You will always need to be able to create a great product requirements document! Spending even a small amount of time browsing improvement proposals for DAOs, for DAO-based projects like Synthetics, show how absolutely important it is to create clear, concise, and compelling specifications for consideration and ultimately approval or rejection by the community. Now lastly, onto what will change and how product managers need to adapt. Prediction number 1, the creation of innovative Web3 products will increasingly launch with a community of users from the very beginning. New DAOs are at their best when they can harness a passionate community of early adopters around a shared product vision. In this world, product managers need to recognize how existing communities of people, for example musicians, academics, derivatives traders, can be harnessed for the formation of a DAO in order to jumpstart its product market fit. We are seeing the beginnings of this today, for example with Bankless DAO, a media DAO of passionate content creators committed to producing media which articulates the benefits of decentralization at scale. Prediction number 2, product people will need to actively think about the life cycle of Web3 products in terms of their level of decentralization. The story of the decentralized exchange Uniswap highlights this really well. Originally conceived by Hayden Adams in 2017 after being made unemployed, Uniswap transitioned to a DAO in 2020 by distributing governance tokens to every user that had ever used the exchange. Not everything has to be 100% decentralized from the start, but critical thinking is required to plan the roadmap for prioritizing governance functions which can benefit from greater decentralization. A useful mindset for the development of Web3 products, prediction number 3, this is my final one. A useful mindset for the development of Web3 products is to start thinking about product requirements as dials to be set, rather than exact values to be hard-coded. Product managers will need to shift their mindset from being responsible for finding all the answers to rather proposing a system of parameters and handing the exact setting of these parameters over to the community of DAO members to determine. Instead of what should the value of X be, the thinking becomes what are all the possible levers to be pulled that the community should be responsible for setting. An example of this today is again synthetics, as demonstrated by their configuration proposals which sit alongside their previously mentioned improvement proposals. In conclusion, I believe that the decentralized governance models that support the most successful Web3 products in this space will be the real innovation breakthrough. The winning open source governance models brought to the development of open source blockchain projects may in themselves be blockchain's killer app. At its core, governance is simply a process by which humans make collective decisions about a particular thing to ensure optimal, robust outcomes. Improving this holds extremely significant potential for unlocking a new wave of innovation with an ability to ultimately support greater human flourishing. Thanks very much.